Racism. WNBA fans Alyssa Thomas claiming racism. That's shocking to me. It's very shocking to me to put the league in that position. And why is it shocking? Well, folks, you got to look at this thing, and you got to look at it correctly, okay? Because Caitlinclark came into the WNBA to play basketball. This whole thing has never been about basketball, and it's still not about basketball, okay? So it's not about the Caitlinclark as the player, okay? You had a player that came into the WNBA, supported the WNBA, supported the players in the WNBA, and then what happens at the end of the year, you have a come to Jesus meeting, okay, and that's what I call it, a come to Jesus meeting. Somebody sat the women down and said, hey, Caitlin goes, you're done, okay, and here's the deal comes behind it, so we switched the narrative, right? We're going to switch the narrative that Caitlinclark fans are racist. They're racist, okay, and who started that? Who started it, right? Because you got to look at it and say, well, they didn't just start here. They had to get here somehow, right? And it goes back. I'll tell you. I follow the story. I'll tell you the story. Okay, you got Cheryl Swoops started the story, okay, because Money Mike can tell you can start with a pebble in the water, and by the time it gets down and through the tributaries and everything, and it hits the delta, you know what? You're going to have a boulder going to land. Well, Cheryl Swoops came out and said black women can't be racist. That's right. That's what she said. Black women can't be racist. Now, so here it is. You take a narrative, and the players hear that, okay, and what are they doing? They're listening to a player that they feel has been the ambassador, I guess, of the league, but Cheryl Swoops is an ambassador in her own way, okay? She's not so concerned about the league, okay, and all of this not concerned about the league, folks. This is something that's went way off the Richter scale, and you got Cathy Engelbert trying to bring it back, trying to grow the league. Gets on CNBC Money Channel, which CEOs do on a consistent basis because they're marketing the product and they want to let the investors know why you should invest in the WNBA. But Swoops takes it past that, and then the WNBA players now all of a sudden have chosen another narrative, right? Because we got to remember the first narrative. What was the first narrative that the WNBA players had? Okay, you're talking about Caitlinclark. You're not talking about, it would be different if you were talking about a random player, right? Let's be honest. You're talking about Caitlinclark. All right, and this deal with Caitlinclark and everything that you guys have done, you know what? You guys have had a lot of fun with this thing, and I'm going to put an end to it. I don't know if I can put it into it because here's the thing with women. Women don't never stop. They don't never stop. This thing can go on for the next 28 years, and they'll live their entire lives. They'll be retired out of this game. What are they going to be doing? They're going to be still talking about this. Why? Because it's not about basketball. This thing's not about basketball, and somehow it got away from them, and it started out, if you look at it, and where did it all start, and how did they all get started, and what did they do? It started with Lisa Bluter. Okay, you got Iowa. So basically, if the WNBA players feel that Iowa and Indiana fans are racist, okay, that's as far as from through it. I've been all through those places. I've been in Indiana a whole bunch of time. The only thing that got in Indiana that you want to say they're better than anybody else, they got a higher basketball IQ. They love their basketball, okay, and they support and loyal to their fans. That's what they do. Now, but you move this thing and you get to going in the WNBA, and this is what's shocking to me, right? So you can't play straight up basketball because the narrative was she wasn't good enough, right? So you got a narrative where you're putting out for Caitlinclark's not good enough to play in the WNBA, right? She's not good enough. You're playing with grown women. That's where you started, see? So, folks, with Money Mike, this is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. We are powered up by Fanatics. We got the best gear that you'll ever want to have. We are getting into corporate enterprise brand ambassador, but we got the best products of what you need. But that's not the story to professional sports. They like to move the goalposts when they find out, ooh, that one was wrong. We're not going to win on that. First, Caitlinclark couldn't play. They felt you were all grown women. Well, you ain't grown enough yet because she busted you up time and time again, and she took your heart out on the court, right? So when you first started this thing, and you got to go back because, the poke in the eye and Alyssa Thomas and all that, I mean, come on, let's go back, right? We got a ring on it, right? We want to put a ring on it. So Angel Reese smacks Clark around the head, right? Let's get into it because the WNBA and consists in, it is developed with the majority of players that are African American women. So let's take a look at what went down, right? So you smack Caitlin across the head. Nah, that ain't no big deal. Don't worry about that. At first, and then the narrative changed. Well, it's just basketball, right? And you got Cheryl Swoops up there just going at it, man. She can't get tired till they got to get her right out of there, right? So then you go all the way back and you get all the way to this and you want to try to understand, right? Because you get all the way back to Christie Sides and all this stuff. So what do Christie Sides? Caitlin Clark walks through the door. Man, she's got a lot of bad habits. She's got to learn how to play this WNBA game. Yeah, but see, here's what happened. You got embarrassed. Caitlin fights back. Let me tell you guys something. Caitlin fights back. You may not think because I use the narrative and not the movie, not the persecution of Jackie Robinson 42, right? So I'm not talking about what African Americans went through or what black ball players went through, okay, to play. But if you look at the narrative, okay, of what the WNBA players have done, okay, to Caitlin Clark is the same narrative they did to Jackie Robinson, right? Not the persecution and the fans and everything. Well, yes, you can because they are saying the same thing, that they're hearing the same thing Jackie Robinson heard, right? But what the coach of the Dodgers told him, get ready because there's more coming. WNBA players, get ready, there's more coming. Now, when you get in this thing and you get ready and you say there's more coming, okay, what does that mean? That means there's more players, more popularity that the ambassadors, okay, the ambassadors they want for the WNBA, those are the players they want to put on the national games, right? Because you can't put a player that's calling the league racist, okay, or racism, or calling fans racism, expect the viewers to watch, right? So they got to switch the narrative. They got to bring these new players in, and they got to create a new narrative, okay, of the WNBA, right? Because the W doesn't work, okay, for the public market. Now, it's your league, right? You want it to be your league, and you want it to be what you want it to be, but you can't do all this if you don't have the money, right? Blowing narratives, okay, because if somebody doesn't get a job in America, corporate America, and let's flip the script on the other side, somebody, because this is common knowledge, somebody doesn't get a job in corporate America, well, you know what you're doing is they were overqualified, but you didn't hire them, okay? So here you got Reese sitting here and Caitlin Clark and the whole Olympic team. You told us how hard this team was. You told us how great the team was. You told us how this is a team that, oh, my goodness, there's no other better, right? But the WNBA All-Stars take the court and dust them off. That's the first thing I see. Second thing, this is a form, okay, of discrimination, right? Because you have somebody like Caitlin Clark's overqualified for the job. You're saying you're not qualified for the job, but she gets in there and busts all the players up, right? So you got Reese started this Team USA, right? Because this thing built up. But now you build it all the way up. You got what you want. You went and played the Olympics. You did all the things you want to do, right? And now you want to come back and say the fans are racist, but you created an exciting all of this. You excited all of this, right? Because this didn't happen on its own. So you got to understand when you're talking about Caitlin, right? Caitlin came to the WNBA to play basketball. Okay, and that's what she came. And you know what? When it comes to players and everything and WNBA players, because I've always told you the WNBA players need to be managed. You know why they need to be managed? Is because you can't allow players to do what they want within the league. Why? Because the WNBA players believe they are the product. In the NBA players believe we are not the product, and we know we're not the product. So we'll never say we're the product because they'll cut you out of this league, as I told you, right? So you got Caitlin's been playing and everything, and what does she do? All of a sudden, one by one, she takes them down. Didn't get the aces. It is what it is. Okay, but you get in there and you put it in the thing with the foul, right? So you got the WNBA officials coming in the thing, and they're officiating games. But all of a sudden now, you got officials that don't have sight, right? You're calling fouls on players that are not even existing in the play so you can stop the Indiana Fever, right? So you're going to call the Indiana Fever fans racist. But all these things are happening in the WNBA, and these are facts, you know. Like I always said, I got my good friend. She wants to hear nothing but tell me facts. Well, you know what? Anytime you're calling a foul on a player, Boston, and Boston's not even near to play, that's telling me something right there. Your integrity, okay, and your credibility as a WNBA official went out the window. Now, that didn't happen in one game. We ain't going to stop there. We're going to keep the fire going, right? Because we got to get Caitlinclark out of this thing, right? We want to do it as quickly as we can so we can go on and enjoy ourselves and we can get this thing to wipe back where it should be. Not so fast, not so fast, right? Because you're going to take it a step further and then you're going to get to Alyssa Thomas, right? And Alyssa Thomas is not going to stop there. Okay, no, you're not going to do that because here's the deal. When you get to Alyssa Thomas, well, let's not get there because we don't want to get there too fast, right? You're just going to flat out poke a player in the eye. You're going to take your hand and you're going to squeeze it down and stick it right in the player's eye, right? But if she gets in the game, she's going to do something. She definitely did it, poked her right in the eye. And then you got Mabry coming right behind it, right? And you got Mabry coming right on behind it, right? Mabry's teasing and laughing at the player just get poked in the eye, right? But I kudos to the Indiana Fever because they put them all on the deck, right? All of them should hit the deck because that's dirty basketball. I told you what they do, right? Boston fans, it doesn't matter. Boston fans, you got a right to be Boston fans, right? Raider fans, you got a right to be Raider fans. You understand this? Caitlinclark fans, let me tell you something right now. You got a right to be Caitlinclark fans, right? So it's nothing that's going to stop this thing from keep doing it what it's doing. But you know what? The WNBA players, they've knocked her down. They slammed her to the floor. They beat her to a bloody pulp. And now you want to call their fans racist, right? So let me get this right. The WNBA is not the Women's National Boxing Association. I repeat, the WNBA is not the Women's National Boxing Association. Okay, it's the Women's National Basketball Association. So all year, you're going to beat the woman to a pulp, and then you're going to come back and say we're playing basketball. And then on top of that, you got Cathy Engelbert. Oh, well, she goes along with it because she doesn't think you're going to go this far. Well, Cathy Engelbert, let me tell you something. They ain't got no limits to what they can do, all right? Because at the end of the day, now you want somebody has to come to Jesus meeting. Here's what I'm talking about. You want to talk about, oh, yeah, we got Unrivaled over here, and we got this over here. Caitlin's not involved in any of that, right? Because at the end of the day, why would I go play in a league for players that have been beating me to a pulp that I've been sitting here, right? And here's the deal. Money Mike, always, I'll tell you, it's my opinion, okay? But if it turns to truth, I've given you the facts before they happen. And I got all my friends. I get 100 calls a day. Let me tell you something, folks. This is not something that I'm going to let slide. Why I'm not going to let slide is because of the fact you can't come in here and say black women can't be racist. You go in there, you beat a woman to the pulp, okay? You beat her to the pulp, right? You know, you think about it. Alyssa Thomas, boy, Alyssa Thomas, that's something. That's magic in a barn, right? Because here's somebody going to do a full-on body check, right? Not a simple body check. She wants to go full-on body check, knock the woman to the ground, knock the woman down there out, okay? And then you get up there and you go all the way back and you get in there and you get this situation with the Indiana Fever. I ain't going to let this situation go. How in the world can you have a player? And I told you this. I said, you know what? Carrington's going to do something and can Alyssa Smith put her on the deck? Well, you know what? We got the integrity of the game just got compromised. And why did the integrity of the game just got compromised? Because you have two players that have been communicating back and forth, okay, publicly, okay, not silently, not sending text messages. See, this is what I mean by the WNBA players. See, and you want to talk about it because the majority of you are African-American women. See, because you know what? I looked back and I saw it and I said, you know, with Liz Cambridge, and Liz Cambridge just really told it to me right? Liz Cambridge says the WNBA doesn't pay my bills, okay? That's when you start realizing, whoa, okay, you know what? The WN doesn't pay your bills. So that's what the women think of the league, right? Because they're not kidding anybody. And Money Mike's here to just, you know, bring it out, right? You know, you got to look at this and say, well, a player of the WNBA doesn't pay my bills, okay? Now you got to put that in perspective. What's that player saying? Because I think that player said something that may be affecting to the day. And, you know, because when you get somebody that says that the WNBA doesn't pay my bills, okay, you got to understand that. What are they saying? And I think this is what the WNBA players are saying, right? I mean, you gotta kind of give it some kudos because I believe that this is a true statement, and I believe this is what the players believe today, right? And when you get players that believe this today, you got to ask yourself, whoa, what are we really doing and how's this all really work, right? And when you get back to it and you look at it, okay, and you look at the player that's sitting here and what the player is really trying to say and how this whole thing came about and how Liz Cambridge just really put it out there. Okay, she was very, very adamant about this whole thing about the WNBA doesn't pay my bills. Now, when you get players in the WNBA, and this is what I'm talking about, here's Cambridge, right? And I'll bring it to you because we're going to be on this story for a minute. The WNBA players, now this is what I'm talking about, folks. The WNBA players believe the WNBA doesn't pay their bills, right? They don't pay their bills. So what are the WNBA utilizing the WNBA for? They utilize it for a platform, right? So you got a platform that you can take and use and distribute whatever you want to say on it, right? Because it doesn't pay your bills, right? So you got to look at that. So the $76,000, that's chump change to players, and they don't really care about it, so they're speaking freely. Now, when you get on there and you do all this, and here's where I'm saying, when you get all of this and you do all this, this is where it gets shocking to me.
Honestly, it's been a lot of nonsense. I think in my 11-year career, I've never experienced the racial comments from the Indianafever fan base. We had her face on a serious matter that happened in this world, and it's unacceptable, honestly. And there's no place for it, and we've been professional throughout the whole entire thing, but I've never been called the things that I've been called on social media, and there's no place for it. And basketball is headed in a great direction, but nah, we don't want fans that are going to degrade us and call us racial names. I mean, we already see what's happening in the world and what we have to deal with in that aspect. And we come to play basketball for our job and it's fun, but we don't want to go to work every day and have social media blown up over things like that. It's uncalled for, and something needs to be done, whether it's them checking their fans or this league checking. There's
Okay, I beg to differ. Now you're going to go a step further. You're going to go specifics. Okay, you got to understand what Alyssa Thomas is doing. She's going specifics. And what did I tell you? The WNBA, the WNBA players are calling the fans in Indiana, Iowa racist. Right? They're racist, but you're going to do a full-on body check, and Cheryl Swoops comes out right in the beginning and says the WNBA, a black woman can't be racist, right? But you know what? You're not going to give a woman a job, okay, that should have the job, okay? For whatever reason you feel fair, you didn't give Caitlin a Team USA bid, and then you promised us all these promises of what the WNBA could do, right? But you guys are going to sit here, and here's how the excitement goes. You got two players. One of them gave a full-on body check. That's right. I'll call it just like it is. Listen, Thomas gave Caitlin Clark a full-on body check, right? And then you come back here, and you go in here and listen. You got here Carrington to give her a full-on poke in the eye with fingernails that are not legal, okay? The fingernails are not legal, right? So you're going to keep on going and pounding this woman and pounding her to the ground, right? And then you're going to get there, and you're going to let them take a beating, right? And so then at the end of the day, you get to the end of the year, and you got your own coach, right? You really want to win ball games. You know what? Hey, this is great. I got 3 seconds left in the game. I don't have any sets designed for Caitlin Clark. So guess what? Caitlin's my best player to take the ball out of bounds. That's about as bush league as you can get. I mean, and if you want to get it, like I tell you, grassroots is nothing but professional basketball development. And I'm going to tell you flat out, that's about as bush league as you get. You get your fans, Indiana Fever. See, they can block the whole thing. The narrative was, well, we're going to block it, right? We're going to block it because she's not good enough. They found out she's not good enough. Okay, then we're going to switch our tactics. We're going to go to dirty ball. We go to dirty ball. They can't stop her there. Now we're going to block her within the plays and the sets. And, folks, I'm giving it to you. If you're telling me this didn't happen in the game, you know what? You better ask somebody because I need to know, right? Because you wanted to send a message that Caitlin Clark couldn't play defense. So what does Christie sides do? She takes Caitlin Clark out of the games in the end. She runs her for offensive, defensive purpose. Comes in through the WNBA draft, spits on Caitlin Clark and spits on Lisa Bluter, right? Can't hold a candle to Bluter. There ain't no doubt about it. Can't hold a candle to Bluter, but you're going to spit on her and say Caitlin's got bad habits, right? So that's the same thing if you telling Don Staley, well, Don, all the South Carolina players got bad habits. What that's saying, that's telling them you got bad coaching, right? But you eat off something you can't chew, right? Because you got too deep in the game, and then you find out her knowledge is way above your knowledge. And then all of a sudden, Christie Sides can't be a coach anymore. You know what? Christie Sides turned into a chaperone. And when you turn into a chaperone as a WNBA coach, you've lost the locker room, you've lost the team. Okay? What happened with over there with Witherspoon turned into a chaperone, right? You lose the locker room, you lose the team, and now you're not coaching anymore. You're just chaperoning, protecting players, right? So you get in the WNBA playoffs, and I'm here with Christie Sides, and I'm watching this game. Carrington does something, and all of a sudden, Alyssa Smith, here's the facts of the matter, and I want to know what the facts are because people got to answer for these facts. Alyssa Smith plays 20 minutes, scored 16 points, right? Final game of the year, gets in there, been battling back, playing basketball, gets to the playoff, gets 9 minutes, and gets 4 minutes, right? So you got 13 minutes out of 80 minutes, and now you're trying to tell us what a great season that you had. But also remember, Christie Sides, the coach, never had a lead above 30 points, didn't know what to do, and opened up in press conference, got in there in the game 2 of the final, say we went into halftime, we made no adjustments, right? Because you don't understand how to do it, so now you're going to blame somebody, block somebody, and then at the end of the press conference, you never talk about the game. You know what? A coach would normally go to that podium and say, you know what? If you're going to get the fine, get it. You're going to go in there and say, we shot 9 free throws. They shot 23, 24. You know what? That's BS, right? Stick to the game. But what does she do? She goes straight to the Caitlinclark fans, right? This is the deal, right? The fans are doing this. The fans are doing that. Well, get over it. Because you know what? If you can't coach good enough, then why should the fans accept it? Why should the fans accept Witherspoon taking a collapse at the end of the year and you raising acquisition costs? So now you got to go back to these same fans. You got to go back to these same fans. So what do you got to do? You got to come up with a package to get them back because they don't want any part of your organization. But guess what? You know what? You sit in there, and I knew it from the time I saw it. I saw Shaquille O'Neal walk into the building. Shaquille O'Neal's in your building. That's right. He's in the building. He's been in the Sacramento Kings building. You know what? And that Sacramento Kings came down, turned us around. Vlade Divac was the general manager. Vlade'd still be there if he'd have drafted Luka, right? But he didn't do it. He took a post player, and guess what? Okay, Luka's going to be there, all WNBA, and we got a player that's not even on. I think he plays with the Detroit Pistons. This is basketball, folks. When I tell you grassroots, that's professional basketball development. You can get some things past most people, but you can't get them past me because the reason why is I can tell when you're protecting players. And when you start protecting these women and their pros and all this that goes on, folks, I'll cut it to the core. I'll tell you right now, I've never seen pro basketball players talk so much about teaching. See, in the NBA, what makes the NBA great, they're not teaching anybody, right? They'll teach you a couple execution. But the coaches are so good at drawing up sets, right? Because when you get a good player, you got to draw up stuff to get them open. Now, you got to, what do you got? You got the counteractive team. You know what? Normally, when you get into basketball, the WNBA team, and the way it's supposed to work, you're going to have one team going to take offense. They're going to scout it out. They got the scouts out there to put the videotape. The other coach is going to tape defense. You come in with a defensive plan. This is Christie Sides. And everybody wants to say, well, Christie Sides can do it. Well, you're being a little tough. You're being a little tough on Christie Sides. Really? Really? Okay, so let me ask you this. Let me ask the Indiana Fever fans, and I want to ask everybody out there, if I'm being so tough on Christie Sides, right? How do you let a player, Christie Sides, get 25 assists in 2 games? Heck, if you played the Connecticut Sun, because you're not going to make any adjustments and you're not going to change anything, which pretty much guarantees the loss, then on top of it, after you don't make any adjustments, you tell us how great the other team is. So Christie Sides basically interviewed for the Connecticut Sun in case she doesn't have a job, right? Because you're not coaching the Indiana Fever because you're not understanding that Caitlinclark makes shots and players that don't make shots take balls out of bounds with 2 seconds left. So you blow that possession, which, again, I told you, put yourself in the hot seat because at the end of the day, if you don't know how to get things done and execute at the end of games, I said the only thing Christie Sides got to do in this game, you got preparation, so it's really not coaching. But it's going to come down to the end of the game. What do you draw up? What do you draw up? What do you draw up? You send Boston out there to the three-point line. She's never been out there again, right? So sometimes we do things that don't make sense. And when you do them as don't make sense, you get called out on them, then you got to deal with it, right? Because at the end of the day, it's basketball, right? So you got Kennedy Carter, popped her down, knocked her down, and you know what? What did I do, right? You've been beating on this woman all year long. You've been beating on her all year long, anytime or any place you can get to. And you got old Cheryl and Angel, and then Angel comes back after Teresa Witherspoon gets fired, right? What are her words? I can't believe this happened. I can't believe this happened. You know what? And so when a player doesn't take accountability for coaches getting fired, man, you got problems, right? I'm only bringing it to you because this is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio podcast. We're powered up by fanatics, and we ain't going to go in there and talk about Angel Reese popping the woman up behind the head. We ain't going to get too much in Alyssa Thomas, going in there, knocking the woman flat out. And again, I like what Liz Cambridge said. She said it the way all the WNBA women need to say it, because this is what you're feeling. The WNBA doesn't pay my bills. What that's saying is I make so much more money other places, I don't even need the WNBA. The African-American women that are playing in the WNBA today don't need the WNBA. They're making that as plain as they can. You want to start talking about racism? Well, guess what? You know what? You're not going to get any more racism than the Patriots fans. You're not going to get any more racist than you call the Celtics fans. And you're not going to get any more racist than you go to the Oakland Raiders and you go down into the black hole, okay? Because we're blue collar. You're not going to get any more racist when you go down there to Pittsburgh, okay, and you go into the Steeler country. You're not going to get any more racist, right? Because when you get to those places, those fans believe in their team. That's a part of the job. You don't want the job, then you can take another job, okay, unrivaled. You don't have to play in the WNBA. It doesn't pay enough, right? So when you get back to Liz Cambridge says they don't pay my bills, you got options. Go play somewhere else. You don't have to play in the WNBA. And I'm going to tell you another thing. The WNBA and the worrying about social media. Let me tell you the one that the fans that buy the tickets are the fans that are wired in, okay, that cord cutting that's going on. The subscriptions that you get and the fans that buy the ticket, they're sitting on DirecTV. They're not harassing you on social media. You may get a lot of people. I would love to see that survey because I'm about numbers, right? I'm about numbers to find out what WNBA players do the fans come to see. Okay, that's what Cathy Engelbert needs to run. That needs to be published, right? Because when the WNBA fans are buying tickets, if they're not buying tickets to see you, then you need to really understand what the league is all about. Because the WNBA needs players that the league is buying tickets to come see you. Okay, so when you talk about UConn and coming in and Gino went back and forth and all this, let's see how Paige Buchers handles it, right? Because I know what Kiki's going to do. I ain't got no problem with Kiki coming in, played at Stanford. That's a ball player, folks. Can face up, got enough size to do it all. But when you get to the players that, man, oh, man, you guys are going to go out here play this dirty basketball, then you're going to pop back around and act like, oh, my goodness, nothing we've done, right? This thing goes on and on and on, but it is the WNBA. I always wondered about it. I'm objective. I'm not coming in here with no past experience, anything like that. I'm just looking at it, the world of sports. I can look at the world of sports a couple different ways. Baseball, I've always had a problem. Oakland A's got a $67 million payroll. Top team in the Major League Baseball spends about, $300 million on the payroll, right? So you got Herb Simon, nobody's capped. Here's the thing, the cap needs to go out and let the owners spend the money, right? Because the owners get to pick the players. See, this is what the WNBA players got to understand. When the money comes down and it starts flowing down, okay, and players start making $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, because it shouldn't be no unilateral cap, right? You can't bring all these players at the same time. So now you got a situation where the players, the owners, got to have the flexibility because you got some players in the league bring in more players. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's take A'ja Wilson. Because A'ja Wilson, I got a fondness of A'ja Wilson. I like A'ja Wilson. A'ja Wilson's being handled by Clutch Sports, right? So I know Clutch knows the business and A'ja Wilson. See, here's the deal. A'ja Wilson really needs to be the league ambassador. In fact, before anybody gets on the WNBA and gets out there and starts saying anything, you better go check with the leader of the WNBA. Who's running the league? Because a lot of these players, they're running solo, and I've told you the WNBA players need to be managed. They need to be managed, okay? Yes, they're majority African-American women. They need to be managed. Why do I say that? NBA players are managed. NBA players do not want to get up in the morning, go to workouts. NBA players do not want to show up for appearances. NBA players don't want to show up for camps, but they're managed, right? Agents got to send somebody over there, sit with them 24/7, okay? Because if you don't, you'll never get them, right? So the WNBA players do what they want to do, but, man, they need to be managed, okay? A lot of this stuff, you could be making 5 times the amount of money you made if you had somebody managing this for you. But the WNBA has got to change the whole thing because, man, if you look at the WNBA, and folks, I'll tell you, I'm just be honest. Let's look. And that's what got me with Smith. I don't know why the softballs go so deep, maybe because they know the answer and the reporter's thinking the rhetorical question. But here you are, you're an Indiana Fever fan. And I want you to walk through this because you're an Indiana Fever fan, and you get there and you get to the playoffs game 2. Nia Smith plays 9 minutes and 4 minutes, and you don't have an answer. And no reporter asked about that. No reporter asked about that. You got Christie side sitting here, got a changing of a guard. You got a brand new president coming in, taking over, coming down as the NBA GM and coming back to the organization after being in there. And then you got nobody wants to ask you, Christie sides, will you be back next year? Okay, these things are really questions, man, that you got to answer and you got to clean up, because at the end of the day, I'll tell you this, you're either going one direction or the other direction. And I always tell you, the way this collective bargaining agreement structured for Caitlinclark, and the Indiana Fever will never let this happen, but you got other teams can lose players because all you got to do is buy them out. If you don't have the money, I'll tell you something, Jerry Jones, Dallas Cowboys, I'll tell you something, he told Mark Davis of the then Oakland Raiders, L.A. Raiders, he said, Mark, if you don't got the money, sell the team. If you don't got the money, sell the team, right? So what is he saying? Mark took that to heart and said, hey, I'm going to get in the ownership group, Las Vegas, okay? Now he's got money's coming out of his ears, right? He's got money to give his WNBA players, right? So you got to ask yourself, the WNBA, they got a lot of women executives. The WNBA has a lot of women executives, and let me tell you this about women executives. This is what the NBA needs to do, because it came out with something was sent over to my desk, okay, that NBA, it's got about 44% ownership stake still left in there. Those women working in the NBA, top executives, don't take their salaries, send them back to clean up the WNBA. Send those women back to clean up the WNBA. That's right. You said if the NBA, Adam Silver, okay, and you got Cathy Engelbert, okay, and we've got a collective partnership, you send the WNBA women back, okay, to the WNBA to clean this up, get it right. It's women to women. You don't need any men in this. This is the women's game. This is how they play, right? And for the WNBA officials, that'll be on my next one. I got one coming. You send back the women and all the women in the G League back to the WNBA. If I were Adam Silver, I'd utilize the WNBA. Okay, let's see if you can call basketball in the WNBA. That'll tell us if you can call it in the NBA. But you're going to make a tour of duty, because at the end of the day, when you got people, players, competing for a championship, you get in there and the first ball you whistle, bang, okay? Because officials are a different world, folks. And if you understand it, let me share how it works for those of you who may do. Okay, you got 3 officials on the court. You got a lead, you got a trail, and you got a C. Each one of them has areas that they're supposed to watch. Now, what's the number one thing that can happen when you get on the court with a player like Caitlinclark and you never officiate a game like Caitlinclark? You end up doing what they call ball watching. That's the number one thing. You're supposed to be watching your area. So Money Mike's got an area he's watching over here, but Money Mike's hands up here watching the ball, right? Look at that shot. Oh, man, is that going to go in? Boom, right? So you got a player getting killed over here in your area, right? So you got the lead, you're sitting in there, and you're sitting there, right? And they integrate, right? So because if you're the lead on one, then coming back, you're going to be the trail, but then free throws, you interchange. There's all kind of interchanging movements that go on in a 3-man crew, right? But you get there when you get to a 3-man crew and credibility, right? You got a player that's Boston. Now, that's why I told you the players, the WNBA officials don't really know basketball, because I don't need to look at, if I officiate a game with Boston, I don't need to look and see it's Boston. I know Boston. I follow the league. I know the players. All the NBA officials know the players, right? So they don't have to look at numbers and anything. They can go in there, remember the number, okay, it's Boston. But they're so mechanically trying to get it right, and they're trying to get this thing where they're trying to call fouls. Now, this Donahue thing, don't get me twisted. Money Mike's been around. You know, you had Donahue in the NBA, and, man, they had a pregame on Allen Iverson where they were definitely going to call Allen Iverson for everything Allen Iverson did. And they were definitely going to call Carrington in the NBA on Allen Iverson. I understand the walks. The walks make entertainment, but the Carrington, WN officials, you got to call Carrington. I haven't seen Carrington all year. I haven't seen where a player can dribble a basketball, be dribbling on the top end, right? You got a top end dribble. You flip the ball. You hold the ball on this side, then you go back to dribbling again, right? That's Carrington, folks. Come on. Clean it up. Make the ladies play right. I think the other thing is the WNBA needs training, right? Because in grassroots, I told you, and folks, grassroots, again, I say it as a common term, but it just means pro basketball player development, right? So I run my AL team. I go back there and I'm doing a travel team. You know what? I got to have players playing the WNBA. I can't have players that can't shoot the ball. I can't have players that Can't defend. I can't have players that are going to get there to the cup and not going to finish. Okay. And I think the WNBA has been Final Four draft heavy, right? Because you got all these college players. And here's an example, right? You get a player come from the HBCU, comes from Jackson, right? There's a whole bunch of players. In fact, you know what? You got a whole training ground of players over there in the HBCU. You can use them as practice players, right? You can get undrafted free agents having in there. And you got to get these ladies in there where you get more look at more players, because when you start doing this, certain players do certain things, right? You find Dennis Rodman, right? Dennis Rodman did not come out of Duke. Okay, you got a lot of players. John Morant came out of Murray State, right? So you got these guys who are coming out of schools. All right, you got you got Anthony Edwards, right? Think about it. Think of where these players come from. And then you got the NBA. They're cleaning up so much. They're going overseas because they want FIBA basketball. What does the WNBA and the fans want? FIBA basketball, right? They want Olympic style. They're not worried. Here's my concern with it, and I think the WNBA players feel, Agumake played at Stanford. I tell you what, her younger sister, I tell you what, that player there. And for those of you who don't know, I mean, I've seen Midwest basketball. Okay, basically white girls beat the brakes off of black girls at Oregon Trails up there in Memphis, going up there down in Vegas. Folks, if you've been around this game, I've seen some good Illinois basketball come in, and man, they drill you down and they beat you. Okay, this not something I'm making up out of the top of my head. And you look at Agumake, her little sister playing down for the Seattle Storm, man. The older one says we got the product, but the younger one, man, as a freshman, I believe she could play in the WNBA as a freshman. Okay, right there in college. That's how good her hands were. That was the best high-low in basketball I've ever seen in women's basketball. Two players that, man, when she threw that ball, she'd catch it like a wide receiver. Both of them have great hands. Okay, they were gifted. If you look at a player and you can define it in basketball, I try to define who has a gift. They have great hands. Caitlin has great vision. Okay, Caitlin can push the ball, makes a lot of turnovers, but, man, played 40 minutes, 3 turnovers. So all this stuff about who she is, what she can capable of do. So you play 40 minutes in the most important playoff game, you only get third. That's called locked in, right? But you lose the ball game, and it happened, and things do happen. That's why I get on Christie's side. You know what? If I'm going to be having the top player, you know what? Why don't we do this? You got to look at it. Why don't we just have A'ja Wilson take the ball out of bounds, right? Think about it, folks. Just have A'ja Wilson just take the ball out of bounds every time you do it. Why? Because A'ja Wilson's the best passer. That's Bush League. Smutty Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast, folks. Why do I want to bring this to you? Because we could sit here and act in and said we could do a lot of stuff. But I'm going to tell you this, folks. When I get players doing stuff that they did and how they did it, the way they did it, and where they did it, and how, who, what, when, and then you look back like you did nothing. Okay, and now you're going to tell me you're afraid of the racism, right? So, in other words, violence on the court outweighs racism, because eventually you're going to meet your match, okay? That's what my grandmother always tell me, son. Say, son, one day you're going to meet your match now, okay? And eventually everything you do going to be done unto you, okay? Now, that's not promoting that, but I know this. I'm not a fan, and I tell my players all day, every day, I'm not going to let you get out there, and I'm not going to let anybody beat on you. I went as hard to the referees, right? If the referees talked to one of these ladies wrong, I stepped in front and said, don't talk to my players like that. But I can't have players go out here committing all this stuff, doing all these acts, okay? You can go through a film clip. I can put a compilation together, right? Think about it, folks. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. I can put a compilation together of every foul, okay? And the WNBA has the ability to do it. They don't want to do it because they know how bad it is, right? You can put a compilation together, every foul that Caitlin hooked this year, every single foul. You ought to look at some of these fouls, right? The ones, you know about the ones that got called and put on, okay, here today, but you don't know about the fouls. Here's the deal. You don't know about the fouls that they didn't call, okay? And I watched the foul the other night in the game, and Caitlin got hammered. Now, I'm not saying players don't get hammered, but goodness gracious, WNBA officials, do me a favor, call the obvious ones, okay? Call the obvious ones. But you know what? That's the Indiana Fever. You come on back, you get your enforcers, you come on back, you play it again, right? This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. I'm going to wrap this one up. All things are possible to those who believe, but to the African-American and women, don't cry racism after you've already went out there and committed the crime. You've already beat the girl to a pulp. Now you want to call. You don't want her fans. What do you want her fans to say? Oh, that's great. Oh, way to go, WN players. Keep beating on Caitlin. Yeah, let me try that again. That's great, WN fans. Keep beating on Caitlin, right? Okay. So every time you beat on Caitlin, right, what do we want to do? This is what we're going to do. This is what you want the Indian fans to do, right? Okay, let's go foul Caitlin again, right? Let's foul Caitlin again, right? Come on, guys. Let's get this thing right. You're talking about something changing lives, and here's the thing. It's not about the players who are playing today. It's the players who are coming behind you. What are you going to do differently that's going to help them? This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio podcast. We're powered up by fanatics. CaitlinClark fights back. Caitlinclark, Indiana fans, supporting Caitlinclark. They're going to all these NBA arenas, and what do you want to do? You want to see her beat them to a pulp? I don't think so, folks. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio podcast. We're powered up by fanatics. You have a great day. All things are possible to those who believe.